Part 1. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, Reborn. I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince. Author, Gigi. Chapter 1. The snow has fallen particularly hard this winter. The snow in the courtyard is so deep that the servants can't sweep it away. A newly cleared path for people to walk was soon covered with a layer of fine snow. The study was not far away. Without the maid, Shen Yu walked slowly along the corridor and passed through the arch. The sound of the maid chatting could be heard from behind the corridor wall. The young master finally got Miss Lin back. It's a pity that she was a match made in heaven, but now she can only be a concubine for the young master. But madam. The maid's words were sarcastic. She is the daughter of a guilty minister, but she has the nerve to occupy the position of the wife of the main wife. You can't say that. The young lady is quite good, and her father and brother both died in the battle, so it can be considered. What is it? If her father hadn't misjudged the military situation, all of our 100,000 soldiers in the Great Zhou dynasty would not have died at the border. Our young master is a good old man, but the Shen family is in such a state of decline, yet the young master married her into a family with a sick child. The wind and snow were still blowing outside the corridor, sending chills into the bones. Shen Yu felt even colder inside, and she smiled bitterly. It turned out that even the servants had known for a long time that Zhang Lianzi wanted to take a concubine, but it was ridiculous that she, the royal wife, only found out this morning. There have long been rumors in the capital that Zhang Lianzi, the Minister of Rights, and Lin Qingli, the daughter of his mentor, were childhood sweethearts and a match made in heaven. 4 years ago, Master Lin was involved in a corruption case. Master Lin was beheaded according to law and all his female relatives were exiled. Under Zhang Lianzi's operation, the Lin family was rehabilitated this summer, and he immediately brought Lin Qingli back. She had heard countless times from her mother-in-law and maid how sweet Zhang Lianzi's childhood sweetheart was. If she hadn't been involved, they would have been an enviable couple. They said that Zhang Lianzi had a deep love for Lin Qingli and married her, the daughter of the Shen family, just to fulfill a benevolent relationship. It turns out that everything is not traceable. No wonder the servants have been looking at her with evasive eyes recently. No wonder Zhang Lianzi has been avoiding her recently, saying that he has too many official duties and has not returned to the main house for more than 10 days. In total, Lin Qingli entered Beijing almost 10 days ago. Shen Yu didn't continue to listen. She came here today just to get an answer from Zhang Lianzi. After walking around the corridor, several maids turned pale when they saw her. Young lady. As soon as they knelt down and before they had time to apologize, the gorgeous clothes had already touched the prostrate fingertips of several people and headed towards the study. Zhang Lianzi usually didn't like being served closely by others. He was the only one in the study. Seeing Shen Yu come in, Zhang Lianzi raised his head and smiled when he saw her. Such heavy snow came here, are you cold? Seeing the smile on his face, Shen Yu felt a tightness in her chest. The man in front of her married her when the Shen family was in trouble, took good care of her, responded to her requests, and lived up to the expectations of a husband. So now, she couldn't even hate her. He didn't seem to have done anything wrong, but the only thing was that he tied his heart to another woman. Wasn't that a fact that existed before she appeared? I just want to ask Zhang Lianzi, are you pretending to be tired of asking after you for the past 3 years? Have you ever felt wronged by sharing the same bed with me these years? Suppressing the bitterness in her heart, Shen Yu gave him a faint smile and said, I heard that you got Miss Lin back. The smile that had just touched Zhang Lianzi's lips froze for a moment, and the warmth in his eyes gradually dissipated. After a moment, he said, who is talking to you again? Shen Yu pretended not to have seen his expression just now and walked straight to the desk. Now that she has been found, how are you going to place her? Zhang Lianzi avoided her eyes and said, I want to take her as my concubine. Shen Yu noticed his wording. It was not about thinking, but about wanting. He didn't give her any room for negotiation at all, he was just informing her. Seeing that she looked bad, Zhang Lianzi was silent for a moment and explained in a warm voice, King Li has been living outside for a long time. I want to give her a place to settle down. She has a gentle temperament and will not affect your position as the mistress of the Zhang family. Even though she was prepared, Shen Yu was still stabbed hard by his answer. She lost her mother when she was young, and her father and brother died at the border when she was 17. Apart from her, the only remaining members of the Shen family were her stepmother and younger sister. Before getting married, her stepmother had repeatedly warned her that the Zhang family was one of the 4 great aristocratic families, so she was kind to the Shen family by providing help in times of need. In addition, the woman was not as good as before after she got married. Now there was no one to support her, so she had to be patient when things happened. When the tiger girl came out of the general house, she also rode her horse, whipped her whip, and wielded her sword to kill the enemy. However, since her marriage, she had been trying her best to tolerate it, and she had almost forgotten what she was like. This huge Zhang mansion was about to tie her up to death. Shen Yu felt her chest was extremely tight. She took a deep breath and asked, "What if I don't agree?" Zhang Lianzi was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect her to refuse at all. In Zhang Lianzi's eyes, she was always gentle and always said yes no matter what, but this was the first time she expressed her opposition to him so firmly. He sighed, "Auntie, you are not such an unreasonable person. There is no rule in the Zhang family against taking concubines. I need." "Okay, I understand." Shen Yu interrupted him, nodded slowly, and clenched her hands unconsciously under her sleeves. She knew what he needed, and he needed to share His Majesty's worries, so she married the daughter of General Shen who died in the border battle to comfort the soldiers. The Zhang family needs to continue the family lineage, and the person who can give birth to the Zhang family's heirs cannot be him. Since the year after her marriage, she discovered that her meals and snacks were filled with musk that made people unable to conceive. In a daze, Zhang Lianzi stood in front of her and held up the collar of her white cloak for her. "I'll have someone take you back. Don't run out in such a cold weather, or you'll get cold," he said softly. Shen Yu raised her eyes and glanced across his face. Zhang Lianzi had an excellent face, with handsome features and gentle, refined features. It was this very deceptive face that made her stupid for so many years. He pretended to be so good, trying his best to act like a perfect husband, and being considerate and caring to her. When people are at their most vulnerable, they will always mistake the hand stretched out to her as the one they will rely on for life. She once succumbed to the warmth he brought, but now everything makes her feel ironic. "No, it's only a few steps away." Shen Yu smiled at him, turned around for a moment, and a tear fell down. The light flashed and disappeared into the snow-white fox quilt in an instant. There is no one to rely on in this world. In the end, she is the only one left. The journey that originally took half a cup of tea made her walk so long that it seemed like she could see her whole life in one glance. She looked up and saw that the square inch of sky was dyed so dazzlingly by snow, and the vast snow was full of desolation and devastation. Why is this winter so cold? It's even more freezing than the wind and snow in Yanliangwan. If her martial arts had not been ruined and Ben Xiao was still there, she would have been able to ride on it and go straight to Yanliang Pass to the burial place of her father and brother. She would not have been left alone in this world without even saying a word. Neither did the people. But now. Ahem. Shen Yu raised her hand, put her fist on her lips and coughed a few times. But with her current body, let alone going into battle to kill the enemy, she couldn't even lift a sword. "Elder sister." As footsteps approached, Shen Yu turned her head. A woman was already standing beside her, followed by 2 maids. The woman has a delicate face and a pair of clear eyes under her thin eyebrows. Her brows are moving, making me feel pity for her. Shen Yu had never seen Lin Qingli before, but the moment she saw the woman, she intuitively told her that the person in front of her was treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, reborn. I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince author, Gigi. Chapter 2. She called herself sister, but she was clearly the same age as Zhang Lianzi and older than Shen Yu. The wind and sand in the place of exile did not make her grow old, and her cheeks were rosy. Thinking about it, even in exile, Zhang Lianzi protected her and she did not suffer much. There was a smile on the woman's lips. Sister, I am Lin Qingli. I wonder if sister has heard of me. Shen Yu nodded and walked straight forward along the corridor. She asked politely, is there anything wrong with Miss Lin? Lin Qingli stepped up to follow. I know my sister has some objections to Lian Zhi's acceptance of me, but this is already the biggest concession I have ever made. You give in. Shen Yu smiled slightly, her tone slightly mocking. She sneered in her heart, look, this is the gentle Lin Qingli that Zhang Lianzi said, beauty is indeed in the eye of the beholder. Yes, Lin Qingli raised her chin slightly, with a bit of arrogance on her face, my father died unjustly, and now his injustice has been revealed. In order to appease the Lin family, His Majesty originally planned to grant a marriage. You should know that since it is a marriage, you will not possibly a concubine. Shen Yu smiled as usual, Zhang Lianzi already has a wife. You should also know that since the marriage is a gift, it is impossible to give it to Zhang Lianzi. Lin Qingli's face suddenly turned pale. Seeing Shen Yu walking further and further away, she jogged a few steps to follow. Your father and brother buried 100,000 Zhou soldiers at Yanliang Pass. Do you know that you are lucky to be alive? Marrying Lianzi will only drag him down and make him a laughing stock in the court. Shen Yu said sternly, the matter between my father and brother has not yet been decided. Your Majesty didn't say anything. It's not your turn to point fingers here. She had no hostility toward Lin Qingli at all. They both lost a close relative. She could feel Lin Qingli's pain, but when it came to her father and brother, she couldn't bear it anymore. Her steps were so long that Lin Qingli almost had to trot to catch up with her. That's His Majesty's benevolence, just to save some face for your father and brother. The guilty minister is the guilty minister. Their 2 lives are not enough to repay my 100,000 soldiers. Shen Yu suddenly stopped and turned her head slowly. Lin Qingli's sharp gaze made Lin Qingli's breath tighten and she unconsciously took a small step back. He whispered, what do you want to do? Shen Yu looked at her coldly. As she approached step by step, Lin Qingli was forced to retreat by her aura. How come? She had clearly heard from the servants in the mansion that Madame Zhang was the kindest. She didn't believe it at first, but she had secretly seen Shen Yu a few times in the past few days. She was indeed kind to others, and she even turned a deaf ear to her servants gossiping behind her back. Lin Qingli always thought that she was weak and could be bullied, but now her eyes seemed to be able to eat people alive. Why are you looking at me with such eyes? Lin Qingli stammered, everyone in Shengjing knows that your father came in unexpectedly, and there were rumors that your father colluded with the Huns, but he was snapped. With a crisp sound, Lin Qingli turned her head. Miss. 2 exclamations sounded from the maid's mouth at the same time. Lin Qingli didn't expect it. She covered her face and looked at Shen Yu in disbelief. She knew that she grew up in the military and was not like ordinary women, but she didn't expect that she would take action directly. How dare you hit? Shen Yu grabbed her neck and pressed it against the wall, choking the rest of her words in her throat. Shen Yu looked at her coldly, am I too forbearing, so all of you have forgotten who I am? I am the daughter of General Shen Zhongan of the Hussars, and the sister of General Shen Zhao of Yunhui. I have been on the battlefield, killed enemies, and cut off the heads of Huns. If I hear you slander my father and brother again, I will pull out your tongue, so you'd better keep your mouth shut. With every word she spoke, The fear in Lin Qingli's eyes deepened. She had been pinched so much that she could not speak, her cheeks were red, and the two maids were anxious beside her but did not dare to step forward. Shen Yu suddenly let go of her and glanced down at Lin Qingli, who was holding her neck and panting violently. You can go to Zhang Lianzi and file a complaint. Not to mention that you haven't entered the door yet. Even if you have entered the door, it is only natural for the mistress of the house to teach her concubine a lesson. She shook her sleeves and moved forward. She couldn't use her right hand to exert any strength. Just turning like this made her hand under the cuff tremble slightly. It has been 3 years, and there has never been a moment when I felt so comfortable being myself. The wind and snow seemed to be getting stronger again. Under the waterside pavilion corridor, the wind carried snow particles swirling on the frozen lake. Lin Qingli covered her neck and stared at Shen Yu's back, the hatred in her eyes almost bursting out. Why? It was clearly her own position, but this woman had occupied the magpie's nest, and now she dared to show off her power in front of her with the title of mistress. There were rapid footsteps behind her, and before Shen Yu had time to look back, she felt a strong force knocking her out of the corridor. The moment her body was knocked out, she subconsciously stretched out her hand to grab it. Her right hand came up empty, and her left hand seemed to have grabbed someone's arm. The two of them tumbled out of the pavilion at the same time, hit the ice and slid for a distance before stopping. Shen Yu was lying on her back on the ice. The violent impact just now made her shoulder blades hurt. The woman beside her was screaming in pain, and the two maids on the shore were calling miss. Lin Qingli turned over, got up, and wanted to run to the shore. As she moved, Shen Yu clearly heard the crackling sound of the ice beneath her, and the cracks spread out beneath her like cracked earth. Do not move. Shen Yu only had time to shout out, and suddenly everything was empty beneath her body. Then a biting chill swept through her whole body. The cold and biting lake water penetrated her body like a sharp knife. When she opened her mouth, the lake water poured into her mouth and nose, making it impossible to breathe. Help, Miss Lin fell into the water. Shen Yu couldn't swim, so she wanted to grab a leverage point. As soon as she grabbed hold of the broken ice, she was kicked in the chest by Lin Qingli, who was thrashing about randomly. Since her martial arts was abolished, she has been particularly afraid of the cold. Her clothes are heavy in winter, and she is also wrapped in a thick cloak. After absorbing water, her body becomes heavier and heavier. She heard cries for help from the shore, but no one came for her. She also heard the sound of the lake rolling, clamoring to drag her into the darkness. She seemed to see Zhang Lianzi running towards the side, jumping into the water and swimming towards the side. She stretched out her hand towards him, but saw the hand that had tied her hair and drawn her eyebrows holding Lin Qingli, who was fluttering next to her. He didn't choose her. Shen Yu watched desperately as the two figures gradually moved away, her hands still stretched forward. The raging wind and snow seemed to have stopped, and cheers rang out from the shore. She saw Zhang Lianzi's panicked eyebrows when he looked at Lin Qingli, and also saw his indifference when he turned back to look at her. She suddenly realized that maybe falling into the water was not an accident. If she died early, Lin Qingli could be righted. At this moment, she suddenly felt unwilling. No. She couldn't let them get their wish. But the powerless body gradually sank into darkness. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, Reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince. Author, Gigi. Chapter 3. Crunch. Someone opened the door softly and walked gently, thinking it was a practicing practitioner. Lying on the couch was a 16 or 17-year-old girl with picturesque features. However, at this moment, the girl's brows were frowning, her breathing was rapid, and her chest was heaving violently. She must have had a nightmare. The maid reached out her hand towards the person on the bed. Before she could touch the person on the bed suddenly turned over and made a move as fast as lightning. In an instant, the maid had been pinched by the neck and pinned down on the bed. Little, miss. The maid's eyes widened in shock, and her face turned red due to her breathing being blocked. After seeing the maid's face clearly, Shen Yu suddenly let go of her hand and said uncertainly, "Green medicine." Lu Yao was one of her personal maids. That year she went to the front line to collect the bodies of her father and brother. On the way, she met a group of gangsters. Her martial arts skills were disabled. Lu Yao and Hong Qiao died in front of her to save her. Shen Yu stared at the bed curtain blankly. Is this a dream? If it was a dream, it would be too real, but if it was not a dream, such a thing as rebirth would be unheard of. The maid called Green Medicine rubbed her neck. "Miss, have you had a nightmare?" Shen Yu was still panting violently, her back almost soaked with cold sweat. Just now, she seemed to still be able to feel the bone-chilling chill and suffocation in the lake. "How will you be here?" Lu Yao twisted the facial mask and wiped her sweat. "The fever has finally subsided. The young lady has been in a coma for 3 days. Even the imperial doctor from the palace was invited to take a look." Shen Yu looked around blankly, feeling a familiar feeling that she hadn't seen for a long time. This is her boudoir. She has lived there since she was a child. Although she has not lived there for a long time, every piece of furniture and layout here was personally arranged by her brother. There was a dowry placed by the window. Shen Yu stroked away the hand extended by Lv Yao and threw herself in front of the mirror. The girl in the mirror has bright eyes and white teeth, and there is a bit of heroism in her eyebrows that is not found in ordinary women. Her face does not have the sick look she had when she was in the Zhang family, and her eyes do not show the occasional dejection. Looking at herself in the mirror, Shen Yu couldn't help but laugh. God has eyes, she was reborn. Now that the green medicine is still there, what about my father and brother? Shen Yu grabbed the green medicine and asked, "What year and month is it now?" Lu Yao was confused by her question and replied blankly, "Huh? Today is the 17th year of Tongxiu, the 6th day of September. In the 17th year of Tongxiu, on the 6th day of September," Shen Yu silently recited the date in her heart. "In the previous life, when my father and brother went to war, it was the 10th day of September in the 17th year of Tongxiu." She remembered it very clearly. At that time, she originally wanted to go with her, but she had already reached the age to discuss marriage. Her grandmother was originally scheduled to leave for Beijing in early September to meet her stepmother, so she allowed her to behave as she did. That time, her father didn't agree to let her go. Unexpectedly, less than a month later, I received news that in addition to my grandmother, my father and brother had died in Yanliang Pass. Now my father and brother are still alive. Very good. There is still time for everything. What about my father and my brother? Shen Yu hurriedly put on her coat. A joking smile appeared on Lu Yao's face. The general and the young master are meeting guests in the front hall, and the Zhang family has come to propose marriage. Shen Yu only heard the first half of the sentence and was already walking out. When she heard the last sentence, she suddenly stopped and turned around in surprise. Who are you talking about? Which Zhang family? Who else could it be from the Zhang family? Lu Yao said with a smile. It's the Zhang Shilang whom the young lady met at Hongfeng Mountain on the outskirts of Beijing last time. Shen Yu's heart suddenly shrank, and the scene of Zhang Lianzi pulling Lin Qingli away from the lake flashed before her eyes, as if she had just been in a winter ice lake, and her body couldn't help trembling. Seeing this, Lu Yao quickly supported her and reached out to touch her forehead. You don't have a fever. Is there anything else that makes you feel uncomfortable? It's okay, I'm fine now, Shen Yu said calmly after regaining her composure. After saying that, she went to the front hall, thinking that her first meeting with Zhang Lianzi was indeed in Hongfeng Mountain on the outskirts of Beijing, but Zhang Lianzi did not see her at that time. The handsome young man's elegant demeanor was completely different from the rough and tumble men she saw at the border. That was her first heartbeat when she was young. Later, when the Shen family was in despair, the young man reached out to her, but those hands dragged her into the abyss. "Are you happy, young lady?" Lu Yao asked as he followed behind. "No." "But didn't the young lady still mention that she wanted to meet Minister Zhang a few days ago?" Shen Yu solemnly said, "It's just a whim. Don't mention this matter again in the future." Lu Yao shrank his neck and did not dare to speak. Shen Yu was always easy to talk, but her voice just now sounded a bit majestic. Approaching the front hall, my father's familiar voice came. "Zhang Da's family has always produced civil servants. My daughter has grown up with me on horseback since she was a child. She has a naughty personality and likes to wield swords and guns all day long." Shen Zhong'an took a sip of tea and continued, "She claims to be a horse on the grassland. I am afraid that the deep house compound cannot contain that wild girl and it will be difficult to control her." It sounds like a disparagement, but in fact there is a hint of pride that cannot be hidden in the words. Through the window, Shen Yu's eyes suddenly heated up when she saw her father and brother in the hall again. This is not a dream. Her mother died early. Both Shen Zhong'an and Shen Zhao loved her and were reluctant to leave her alone in Shengjing. They took her to the border when she was still in her infancy. Although Shen Zhong'an later married his step-in-law, their children were treated harshly by the step-in-law. She was not in the minority, so she didn't feel at ease, so she kept her with her and sent her to her grandmother's house in Sunyang during the war. The woman in the hall was mostly blocked by the pillars, so she couldn't see who it was, but as soon as she opened her mouth, Shen Yu recognized the voice of Zhang Lianzi's mother. "Mrs. Zhang said, General Shen is joking. Ever since I met Miss Shen by chance at the Jiaqame temple last time, Kwanzaa told me that I should marry a woman like Miss Shen who is not inferior to men. So today I came to propose marriage in person." Shen Yu's mother-in-law in her previous life, Mrs. Zhang, had never seen Mrs. Jiang's face since she married into the Zhang family, and she had never heard her speak in such a gentle tone at the moment. She was not always nice to her. Sarcasm is sarcasm. However, in her previous life, she and Zhang Lianzi were married by the emperor. Mrs. Zhang had never come to propose marriage. Besides, she had never been to the Jiaqame temple at all. This was just nonsense. Mrs. Zhang was clearly dissatisfied with her in her previous life, and Zhang Lianzi also had a deep love for Lin Qingli. It was an imperial order to marry her, so how could he take the initiative to ask his mother to come to propose marriage in this life? Is it possible that if I live another life, everything will be messed up? The conversation in the hall continues. Shen Zhong'an said, "Mrs. Zhang is so straightforward, so I won't beat around the bush. My daughter is now 17. Although she has reached the age of marriage proposal, she can't stop and has a stubborn temper. I'm afraid." Mrs. Zhang smiled and said, "I understand what the general means, but getting engaged is one thing. But we can choose an auspicious day to get married after Miss Shen reaches 18 years old. I think we might as well make an appointment for the two of them first without delay." Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, Reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince author, Gigi. Chapter 4. Mrs. Zhang said this, which made Shen Zhong'an hesitate. He has lived in the border area for a long time and has not stayed in Shengjing for a long time, but he has heard a little bit about some things in the capital. Zhang Lianzi has just reached the age of week, and he has already reached the position of Minister of the Ministry of Etiquette. His future is limitless. If his mentor had not been involved in a corruption case last year, and he was also implicated, I am afraid that the speed of promotion would have been astonishing. It dropped the jaws of everyone in the capital. He didn't care much about his official position, but he and Zhang Lianzi were officials in the same dynasty and had met him a few times. Zhang Lianzi was very talented, humble, and courteous in his dealings with others, and he was a good young man. Shen Hongen thought that it was not a grievance for Zhang Lianzi to be matched with his grandma. Seeing that Shen Hongen still had doubts, Mrs. Zhang smiled slightly and said with dignity, "I am from a womanly family. Although I am not a general, I have the same concerns as a parent. My father also said that if it is a boy, I hope he can be well educated. The military can protect the country, but the girl just hopes that she will be safe and well." Shen Hongen felt sad for a moment. His late wife had said similar words to him before she was alive. There was silence in the hall for a moment. Shen Yu could tell from Shen Hongen's expression that he was a little relieved. She held the window and thought, she must not follow the old path of her previous life in this life. Instead of marrying Zhang Lianzi and becoming a couple and then dying in Zhang Mansion, it would be better to live alone all her life. Without Zhang Lianzi, her father would definitely find someone else for her. She had more important things to do now, and she had no interest in getting married. She had to find a way to completely dispel her father's thoughts. Seeing that the matter was half done, Mrs. Zhang felt happy and prepared to add more fuel to the fire. It's not that she likes Shen Yu very much. It's just that Master Lin was beheaded and all the male and female family members over 6 years old were exiled. Lin Qingli was also among them. This was 2 years ago, but now Zhang Lianzi, now that I'm over 20, every time I mention marriage, I sternly refuse. She was afraid that Zhang Lianzi's heart was tied to Lin Qingli. Just when she was panicking with worry, Zhang Lianzi offered to marry Miss Shen. Although she was not a perfect candidate for her daughter-in-law, she was better than her. Nothing is better. Moreover, General Shen is at the height of his power now, and it is said that his son Shen Zhao will want Princess Shang in the future. In terms of family background, they are pretty evenly matched. I think it's better to just settle it like this, Mrs. Zhang said. Shen Hongen was hesitant, and just about to speak. Shen Zhao, who was silent for a long time, answered, "Father, I think it is better to ask Au what she wants before talking about it." Shen Hongen had a headache when he thought about his daughter. If the decision was made without saying a word, the family would be in a state of uproar due to her. The marriage should be done according to the orders of the parents and the matchmaker. Mrs. Zhang smiled, looking confident, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Why don't the general call Miss Shen out so that I can meet her too? There were many girls in the capital who wanted to marry Zhang Lianzi, and even Shen Yu would not refuse. Shen Hongen thought this was feasible and said solemnly, "It's just that my daughter has been in poor health these past few days and she still has a fever at noon. I'm afraid." "Father!" A clear voice suddenly came from the door. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound. As soon as they met, Mrs. Zhang was stunned for a moment. The woman at the door was wearing a long green skirt, with densely embroidered dark patterns of flowing clouds on the skirt, and a simple white jade hairpin on her head. It did not look simple, but made her face more beautiful. Shen Yu left Beijing when she was young and seldom appeared in the capital. When she came back occasionally, those delicate ladies couldn't hang out with her. The ladies in the capital all said in their chats that she was as good looking as she was, and she spent all her time in the army. She is a woman with vulgar behavior. She never thought that her appearance would be so outstanding. Even in the capital, I am afraid there would be no noble lady who could surpass her. No wonder, Mrs. Zhang thought, no wonder Zhang Lianzi went out 2 days ago, and when he came back, he urged her to come to propose marriage. "Dad," big brother Shen Yu called again. "Aren't you complaining that you have a headache?" Shen Hongen smiled and waved to her, and introduced to Mrs. Zhang, "This is my little girl Shen Yu." Shen Yu stood at the door and glanced at Mrs. Zhang. "Hello, madam." Okay, Mrs. Zhang looked Shen Yu up and down. The more she looked, the happier she became. Zhang Lianzi was born well, and with the addition of Shen Yu, the children born from the two of them would look good. "Mrs. Zhang and I were just talking about your marriage," Shen Hongen said. Shen Yu nodded and took 2 steps in. The expression on Mrs. Jiang's face froze. She trembled her fingers and said, this. Shen Yu limped closer and said innocently, the root cause of the disease that fell on the battlefield is that I am lame in one leg. Shen Zhong'an's beard trembled, who? Before the word now came out, his sleeve was pulled by Shen Zhao beside him. Shen Zhao suppressed a smile on his face and shook his head at Shen Zhong'an. Mrs. Zhang was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She thought that she was lucky that she didn't decide directly. This lame leg would be taken away and thrown away in the future, but it was her Zhang family. No wonder Shen Zhong'an doesn't let people come out to meet guests. It turns out that he is lame. Shen Yu deliberately walked up to Mrs. Zhang with a limp so that she could see more clearly. I walk slowly. I just happened to hear Madam and my father mention my marriage outside. I can give the answer now. Mrs. Zhang said quickly, it's true, I'm not in a hurry. She pinched the handkerchief in her hand, with an awkward smile on her face. I heard that General Shen is not willing to let you get married so early, and I can understand it. Madam, you must not listen to your father. Shen Yu walked over, took Mrs. Jiang's arm affectionately and said, my father wants to keep me at home and take care of me. I am 17 years old, and Mr. Zhang is 3 years older than me. I think it's just right. Mrs. Zhang thought to herself, what a good thing. This lame guy really hates getting married. All the ladies in the capital looked shy when they mentioned marriage. Now Shen Yu is acting like this, she is simply a reckless husband, no, a reckless girl. Such a beautiful face was lost in vain. The wind and sand at the border really couldn't raise a decent noble girl, but she was worse than a girl from a small family. Mrs. Zhang smiled and pulled her hand back. However, Shen Yu was too strong and could not pull it out. Instead, she was pulled painfully. Mrs. Zhang took advantage of the situation and gave her a few false pats on the back of her hand. She laughed twice and said, General Shen is at the border all the year round. I'm afraid he doesn't have much time to be with you. Naturally, he is reluctant to let you go and wants to keep you for a few more years. Shen Yu blinked, no, I'm often at the border, and I see my dad without looking up. He blocked Mrs. Jiang's reasons directly. Mrs. Zhang looked at Shen Zhong'an awkwardly, but the latter unexpectedly nodded in agreement. Shen Zhong'an has been hanging around for many years. If he can't even see Mrs. Jiang's thoughts, then his life will be in vain. Shen Yu's move was to test Mrs. Jiang's attitude, but pretending to be a lame was going too far. If word spread in the future, everyone in the capital would think that Shen Zhong'an's daughter was a lame, and then no one would dare to come to propose marriage in the future. But he didn't know that this was what Shen Yu was thinking. If you met someone unkind in your previous life, it would be best not to marry someone in this life. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince author, Gigi. Chapter 5. Shen Yu smiled and said, besides, when I look at my wife's appearance, she is a kind-hearted mother-in-law. I will definitely get along very well with her when I marry her, and we can often go shopping together. Shop? As soon as she heard this word, Mrs. Zhang had a picture in her mind of her dragging a lame man out. People around her pointed at him and asked her how to hold her head up among the ladies in the future. No, this marriage will definitely not happen. Mrs. Zhang raised her hand and stroked her forehead, frowning and said, it's very windy outside today. I'm afraid it's because of the wind. Why does my head suddenly hurt? The maid behind him understood and was about to step forward. Here I go. Shen Yu rolled up her sleeves. Madam, please don't look at my lameness, but my massage skills are great. I cured Ben Xiao's headache. Who is Ben Xiao? Mrs. Zhang asked casually. Shen Zhao put his fist under his nose and coughed twice. He suppressed a smile and answered, Ben Xiao is my sister's favorite horse. Mrs. Jiang's eyebrows twitched, and she was almost mad that she was actually comparing horses to her. Shen Zhong'an looked at it for a while, fearing that it would not end well if Shen Yu continued to make trouble, so he asked tentatively, "Will the marriage be finalized?" "There's no hurry, no rush," Mrs. Jiang answered quickly. Shen Yu pulled one of her arms and couldn't move it away. She pulled her arm painfully. "I haven't mentioned this matter to my master yet. I just came here to vent my anger today. I need to discuss it with him later." Mrs. Jiang found a lot of excuses and used her special skills to talk nonsense. She was so thirsty that she finally saw Shen Zhong'an nodded and quickly left with her maid. "Madam, don't leave in a hurry. I haven't shown my talent yet. I'm very good at carrying a big vat." Mrs. Jiang walked away quickly and said, "No, stay." He glanced back and saw Shen Yu chasing after her, limping with her teeth and claws. I really don't know how she could run so fast with a limp. Mrs. Jiang was afraid of being caught by her, so she walked faster and faster, not even caring about her manners. When she passed a threshold, she tripped and fell to the ground. The maids next to her helped her up one by one, almost as if they were holding Mrs. Jiang to escape. Ran. After finally getting out of the gate of the general's mansion, Mrs. Jiang felt that half of her life was gone. Seeing the person walking away, Shen Yu gradually lost her smile. "In the last life, my father and brother went on an expedition on the 10th day of September, which was only a few days ago. In this life, we must stop them no matter what, and we must not let them go to the border again. It's just these days, I have to think of a way." Shen Yu walked back while thinking about it. As soon as she reached the door, she saw Shen Zhong'an slam the table and the teacups on the table jumped. It's just nonsense. In her previous life, Shen Yu would have been frightened to death by such a scene, but after resurrecting her life, she missed her father, who was in a rage. Shen Zhong'an pointed at her and cursed, "Do you know that if she spreads the news about her lameness, who will dare to come to propose marriage in the future? I think you will never get married in the future, just be an old aunt." "It's best not to marry," Shen Yu whispered, "I just want to be an old girl by my father's side." Martial arts practitioners have good ears, and this sentence did not escape Shen Zhong'an's ears. These words made Shen Zhong'an unable to even scold her. He looked around, picked up something and pretended to beat her. Shen Yu quickly hid behind Shen Zhao, stuck her head out and said, "Brother, Dad wants to beat me." Shen Zhao smiled and said, "I advise you to admit your mistake quickly." "Dad, I was wrong." Shen Zhong'an was suddenly hugged, and the next word stuck in Shen Zhong'an's throat. Shen Yu hugged Shen Zhong'an and felt that it was great to still be able to hear her father scold her, and it was great to be able to see her brother. Shen Yu has not been close to him since she was 12 years old. Now that she is suddenly like this, Shen Zhong'an feels his heart softening. He sighed deeply and said, "We can't do this again." Shen Yu nodded vigorously, raised her eyelids and saw her brother Shen Zhao next to her. She let go of her father and stepped forward to hug her brother's arm. Shen Zhao lowered his eyebrows, touched her head, and joked, "Where did you learn such a trick? Make yourself invincible." Shen Yu raised her head, blinked and said, "You can teach yourself without a teacher." The main hall and the side hall are separated by a black lacquered sunflower pattern partition, and a bead curtain is installed on the porch. Mrs. Shen watched everything in the hall from beginning to end, and left with a serious face. She walked to the corridor and said, "You see, our mother and daughter are outsiders. They are a serious family of 3. Shen Zhong'an's first wife was the legitimate daughter of the Lu family, a merchant in Hezhu. Although she was a merchant, she was not comparable to ordinary merchants. The Lu family had merchants all over the Zhou dynasty. And she is Shen Zhong'an's stepmother. Shen Zhong'an's first wife died early. In order to win over him, Marquis Cheng'an married a distant cousin of Mrs. Marquis Cheng'an to Shen Zhong'an, who is now Mrs. Shen. Although Shen Hongan treated her with respect and dignity, the couple didn't have the affection to support her all the way, so they could only make do with it. We haven't seen each other for a year and a half, but with the title of general's wife, it is inevitable to feel resentful. Shen Yan followed her with her head lowered and said nothing. Mrs. Shen looked back and said in a nonchalant manner, "You should show your face in front of your father, otherwise Shen Hongan may have forgotten that there is a daughter in this family." Shen Yan bit her lower lip and said, "Father has not forgotten that, he said many things to me yesterday." Mrs. Shen sneered and said, "You haven't seen the way Shen Yu behaves in front of your father. You cower in front of your father. How can you compete with Shen Yu like this?" Mrs. Shen's words made Shen Yan upset, and she rarely refuted, "I don't argue with my sister. My sister treats me well and sticks to me whenever she has good things. Following you." Mrs. Shen waved her hand to ask the servant to step away. "Of course I'll give it to you if she doesn't want it. When did Hezu bring something to you? Didn't she pick it first? Then give it to you after picking out the leftovers. That's my sister's grandmother, not mine. I don't have any share in what was sent to me." Mrs. Shen was so angry that if she hadn't acted like a general's wife, she would have pointed at Shen Yan's nose and cursed her. Seeing that there were many servants in the yard, she had no choice but to throw up her sleeves and leave. "Miss, shall we go back?" the maid asked. Shen Yan stood there for a moment, looking in the direction of the main hall, her eyes a little sad. "Go back. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, Reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince. Author, Gigi. Chapter 6. Mrs. Zhang was happy when she went out, but sad when she came back. When he entered the door, he asked, "Is Lian Zi back?" The concierge replied, "Back to madam, the young master has been back for a while, and he asked me to send someone to report when madam is back." Mrs. Zhang looked gloomy. "No need to report, I will go find him personally." Zhang Lian liked tranquility, so his study was located on the north side of the quiet lake in Zhang Mansion. When Mrs. Zhang found the person, Zhang Lianzi was standing by the lake looking at the water with a somewhat far-reaching gaze. It was already late autumn, and he was only wearing a thin blue gown, which made him look a little desolate in the wind. Mrs. Zhang gave up her original plan of raising an army to investigate and called a servant to get his cloak. Hearing the footsteps behind him, Zhang Lianzi turned around and said, "Mother, today. I know what you want to ask." Mrs. Zhang interrupted him, "Let me tell you straight, Shen Yu cannot enter my Zhang family." Zhang Lianzi frowned. "Why?" Mrs. Zhang became angry when she thought about it, and couldn't help asking, "Why didn't you mention that she was disabled before you asked me to come to your door?" There was a bang in Zhang Lianzi's mind. Crippled? Impossible. "How is it impossible?" Mrs. Zhang said angrily. "She is lame in one leg. It is said that she was injured on the battlefield." "I just said what a young lady looks like wielding swords and guns all day long." Mrs. Zhang looked at him. "You don't know, right? That girl must have deceived her. That Shen Yu wished she could get married tomorrow. She was lame on one leg and pushed me to the gate, causing me to fall. There is no shortage of talented and beautiful young ladies in Shengjing. Don't be impatient. I'll give you a good look later." Mrs. Zhang talked to herself for a long time, and then she noticed that Zhang Lianzi was distracted. "Lianzi." Zhang Lian withdrew his gaze and said, "I understand." Seeing his reaction, Mrs. Zhang was slightly relieved, handed him the cloak, and scolded Zhang Lianzi's servant before leaving. Turning around the moon cave gate, you can still see Zhang Lianzi standing by the lake when you look back. Mrs. Zhang shook her head and muttered as she walked, "What do you think happened to him? He has been standing there these days. He has been watching this lake for decades. What is there to see? Shengjing is prosperous, there is no curfew at this time of year, and there are many hawkers and pedestrians on the streets of Yuzhangzhongtian. It looked like a peaceful year, but who would have thought that the Juexi army would invade in 2 days? The east part of the city is full of high-profile houses with green bricks and green tiles, but the general's mansion is not luxurious among them. The second watch had just sounded, and a carriage stopped at the back door of the general's mansion. As soon as the vehicle stopped and Shen Yu was about to get out of the car, she heard the driver say, "Miss, wait a moment." Then he shouted into the darkness, "Who is there?" Shen Yu opened the curtain and looked around. There was a carriage parked under the wall of the backyard. She didn't know how long it had been parked there. The horse was snoring impatiently. There were 2 people sitting on the edge of the car. The shorter one got out of the car, stood beside the car and cupped his hands in this direction and said, "Is this the lady of General Shen's family in the car?" The back door was dimly lit, and 2 lanterns hung under the eaves, swinging in the wind. "Exactly," Shen Yu said, "what do you want from me?" "Miss Shen, wait a moment." As the boy said this, he turned around and opened the curtain, and a tall young man got out of the carriage. The figure of that man was very familiar to Shen Yu. Unexpectedly, she met Zhang Lianzi on the 3rd day after she was reborn. Her heart was beating wildly, and her hand unconsciously reached for the dagger in her soft boots. "Miss, what are you doing?" Lu Yao looked at Shen Yu's actions in shock. Shen Yu was startled and quickly retracted her hand. In just a moment, Zhang Lianzi had already walked over. She subconsciously wanted to avoid this person because she was not sure whether she would accidentally wipe Zhang Lianzi's neck with a knife. Killing a court official was a serious crime, and she was not sure whether he was involved in her death. Zhang Lian walked to the car and said, "Miss Shen." Lu Yao winked at Shen Yu, "Miss, it's Zhang." Shen Yu covered Lu Yao's mouth and stuffed her into the carriage, pretending not to recognize the person in front of her. "Who are you?" Zhang Lianzi didn't speak, but looked straight at her, his red eyes hidden under the dim light. Finally, he saw her again. In his previous life, he watched her die in front of him. The lantern at the entrance to the courtyard no longer lit up, and every time he passed by it was darkness. Only then did he realize that in those years she had stood there with a lantern every day, waiting for him to return home. Thinking of this, Zhang Lianzi closed his eyes in pain. The pain in his previous life, like his heart being ripped out, still did not lessen in this life. He understood too late that some people are like that, they don't know how to cherish until they lose it. He wanted to call her Au again, but now he couldn't. But it's still early, isn't it? Earlier than they met in their previous life. Seeing that she was still looking at him, Zhang Lianzi looked at her and smiled lightly, "Miss Shen, my surname is Zhang Ji, and my given name is." "Oh," Shen Yu responded with a long voice, "famous prostitute, I'm glad to meet you." The attendant behind Zhang Lianzi looked solemn, "My lord." "It's okay," Zhang Lianzi raised his hand to interrupt, "my mother came to propose marriage 2 days ago. Miss Shen must know about this." Shen Yu said calmly, "Of course I know that Mrs. Zhang escaped from the general's mansion at that time. It can be seen that she regrets coming to propose marriage." Zhang Lianzi raised his eyes and saw that the light at the door was dim, and he could only see half of Shen Yu's profile. Beauty can always add a third of color under the light, making her already outstanding appearance look even more delicate. He had never seen her look like this before. Even her hair blowing in the wind was full of vitality, but there seemed to be some hostility between her eyebrows. Zhang Lianzi frowned. "Yes, there have been rumors in Beijing these past 2 days that the eldest lady in General Shen's residence is Lamei. This news was probably spread by his mother. It is normal for her to be hostile to him. He should give her a good apology. I am here to apologize to you on behalf of my mother for the rumors about Miss Shen in Beijing." Shen Yu said politely, Master Jiang's words are serious, I don't take this matter to heart. Zhang Lianzi's brows relaxed and he said, you call me Lianzi. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with you. Is there anything else, sir? Zhang Lianzi nodded, I came here today to tell you that no matter what my parents think, I want to marry you. Shen Yu's heart moved slightly, and she suddenly remembered that he was so determined when he wanted to take a concubine. You will marry me even if I am a cripple, she asked. Zhang Lianzi took another step forward calmly, and his handsome face was already revealed in the light. He looked at Shen Yu's face intently and said firmly, even if you are a lame, I will marry you. Shen Yu looked at him, her face was still the same, elegant and handsome, but now this person and this face could no longer make waves in her heart. What about your childhood sweetheart, Miss Lin? Zhang Lianzi was stunned for a moment, and then said immediately, she and I. Shen Yu interrupted first, I heard that when the Lin family members were sent to Changzhou, Mr. Zhang rode his horse and sent them dozens of miles away. Zhang Lianzi's expression was a little ugly. Shen Yu bent down and got out of the carriage. Zhang Lian subconsciously reached out to help her. She had already avoided his hand and jumped down. She landed smoothly and lightly, and she didn't seem to have any difficulty in moving. Zhang Lianzi was so smart that he immediately guessed that she was probably faking the lameness. Shen Yu raised her voice and said, I also have something to say to you, sir. I will not marry you, she repeated seriously, even if I am a cripple. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince author, Gigi. Chapter 7. Just as she was about to enter the back door of the general's mansion, Zhang Lianzi called out to her, why? Shen Yu had already stepped through the door with one foot. She paused when she heard this. The door was a few steps higher and she looked down at him. Because I already have someone I like. Is this reason enough? Who? Zhang Lianzi approached, with no intention of giving up. There is no one Shen Yu likes. She will reveal her secret if she hesitates even a moment. Master Lan Yu. After saying that, he closed the door with a bang. The slamming of the door made the boy tremble. Miss Shen has a really bad temper. I don't think she's lame at all. She walks pretty fast. Zhang Lianzi looked at the closed door for a long time and curled his lips. She doesn't know Mr. Lan Yu, she just heard it from others, and she dares to use it to prevaricate him. It depends on whether he believes it or not. The attendant looked at Zhang Lianzi's expression and didn't know why his master was smiling as he looked at the lantern. I'm afraid this person is stupid. He smiled so happily after being rejected. Sir, if Miss Shen doesn't marry. The attendant's voice became smaller and smaller. She will marry. Zhang Lianzi turned and walked towards the alley, and said firmly, she will definitely marry me, she can only marry me. Several of the family's masters are at the border all year round, and there are not many maids and servants in the general's mansion. At this time, most of the servants have already rested. Shen Yu and Lv Yao took a path with few people and walked into the yard with familiarity. They walked in smoothly. Lu Yao has been whispering all the way on the road. Miss, have you ever seen Mr. Lan Yu? Is he more handsome than Mr. Zhang? I heard that Mr. Lan Yu Qingfeng Ji Yu, is it true? Miss. Shen Yu said in a deep voice, shut up. Green medicine. Xie Yun, the crown prince of the north, was named Tingzhou, and the title of young master Lan Yu came from unknown sources. It is said that it was taken from the boat stop to grasp the moon, and the mountain was looking at the clear sky at night. She had never met Xie Yun in her previous life, but she only remembered that the astonishing crown prince Xie, who was 14 years old, drove the Baibei people hundreds of miles away with a sword and became a fearful god of murder for the enemy troops in the border counties. Unfortunately, he was injured on the battlefield and lost all his martial arts, which was somewhat similar to his own situation. Later, when the imperial power changed, The new emperor was afraid of Balin and planned to have him killed outside Chengtian Gate. How could it not be sad that a generation of heroes fell like this? Miss, don't be depressed, please say something. Lu Yao was extremely anxious. Shen Yu poked her head and whispered, use your brain and think about it. If he is Qingfeng Jiyu, what will he rely on when he goes to the battlefield? Does he use male sex to seduce the enemy? Lu Yao suddenly realized, yes, but I have heard rumors that some enemy soldiers were so stunned when they saw Prince Balin on the battlefield that they even forgot to draw their swords. Shen Yu has been on the battlefield. Life and death on the battlefield can happen in an instant. Who can be so distracted that they even risk their lives? Whoever believes in such rumors, she definitely doesn't believe it anyway. It's still somewhat convincing to say that I was frightened by Xiaoyun. But the rumors can't be all false, right? Isn't he no longer on the battlefield? Lu Yao said. Shen Yu thought for a moment and said, that makes sense. He was seriously injured on the battlefield a few years ago. It is said that the arrows were poisoned, and he never went on an expedition again. There is wealth in the north, and the young masters there are all good. Fenja, he might change his ways after retiring. The lights in the yard were mostly turned off. The two of them sneaked out. After entering, Shen Yu called out softly. Hongqiao. Hongqiao had been pretending to be a lady on the bed all night. When she heard Shen Yu's voice, she quickly turned over on the bed, opened the curtain and walked out. You are finally back. The eldest young master came once before, but I was able to put him off. You didn't reveal anything, did you? Hongqiao said, no. Shen Yu took off her hairpin and threw it on the dowry. She took out a small packet of medicinal powder from her sleeve pocket and sat in front of the dressing table, lost in thought. Zhang Lianzi didn't know whether he took the wrong medicine or was struck dumb by lightning. He had deviated from the route of his previous life. He didn't know if his father and brother would go on the battlefield and he would follow the same path. If she remembered correctly, the urgent report of the invasion of Zhuexi's army would be submitted to the Ministry of War on the 9th day of September. The cabinet had discussed the generals to lead the army. On the morning of the 11th day of the lunar month, her father and brother entered the palace and left the capital for Yanliang Pass that day. As long as she prevents her father and brother from entering the palace, the cabinet will naturally discuss the choice of another general. The war is urgent, and your majesty will not delay it. As soon as Zhu's approval is approved, her father and brother will be safe. The second day is the double ninth festival. Originally, they were going to go to a high place to worship their ancestors and admire the chrysanthemums, but the general's mansion was closed to all visitors, and they only invited 2 doctors from the largest medical clinic in Beijing. I don't know what this family ate, but 3 of them fell into the Shen family at once, General Shen, Little General Shen, and the eldest lady of the Shen family who was rumored to be Lamei. The illness came like a mountain, and all 3 of them could not get out of bed. Shen Yu was lying on the bed. She had vomited 5 or 6 times that day. Her whole body was limp and weak. She felt that half of her life was gone. Her father and brother must not be much better either. Miss, wake up quickly, something happened. Shen Yu opened her eyes drowsily, feeling weak all over her body. She saw that the symptoms were actually more serious than yesterday. What's wrong? Hongqiao squatted by the couch and wiped the sweat from her neck with a handkerchief, her face anxious. The general has entered the palace. What? Shen Yu got up from the bed and said, isn't my father sick and unable to go to court? He couldn't walk yesterday. Lu Yao frowned and answered, someone came to the palace again, and this time they even sent an imperial doctor. I don't know what happened there. There was a noise for a while, and then the general left. Shen Yu quickly lifted the quilt and got out of bed. Her legs felt weak as soon as she landed. How long have you been gone? Lu Yao held her arm and said, it's time for a cup of tea. We should still be able to catch up, Shen Yu ordered, Hongqiao, ride your horse to stop him first. Just tell me that this battle is dangerous and don't accept my order. Then prepare a carriage for me. She was careless. She originally thought that as long as her father was not allowed to enter the palace, there would be room for maneuver, but she still underestimated Shen's Hongan. The Shen family has been in the military for generations, but has no title. Shen's Hongan gained military merit through fighting on the battlefield, and climbed to the position of general step by step in the sea of corpses. His feelings for the border are much deeper than those of Shen Jing. When the war breaks out, not to mention being unable to get out of bed, he has to crawl to the border gate even if he crawls. As dawn broke, the carriage rushed all the way to the palace gate. Shen's Hongan was not seen, only Hongqiao, who had been sent to chase him, was waiting there anxiously. Didn't catch up, Shen Yu asked, lifting the car curtain. Her red cheeks were red, and she was sweating all over as she galloped over. I have caught up with you. I have said what I need to say, but I can't stop you at all. Shen Yu's heart sank. Before she could think of a solution, the sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded next to her. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince author, Gigi. Chapter 8. As soon as Zhang Lianzi got off the carriage, he saw Shen Yu in front of the palace gate. I heard that she was sick yesterday, and I sent several herbs to my door but they were all returned. I didn't expect to see her here. Miss Shen. Shen Yu looked in the direction of the voice and saw Zhang Lianzi, dressed in a peacock patchwork official uniform, getting off the carriage and walking towards her. Master Zhang. Zhang Lianzi looked at her face, and it seemed that she was indeed seriously ill. Her little face was so pale that it reminded him of the way she used to linger on the sickbed. What is Miss Shen doing here? He asked. Shen Yu said nothing. Zhang Lianzi thought clearly and asked, General Shen has entered the palace. The urgent report came last night, and the officials of the Ministry of Revenue spent the night planning military expenses and food and supplies. He also stayed up all night and returned to the government at dawn to change officials and go to court. In the border war, Shen's Hongan and Shen Zhao died in the border battle in their previous life. Yesterday, he heard that the two were seriously ill. He also suspected that the two got the news from somewhere that they were sick and avoided the war. Now it seems that this is not the case. Shen Yu nodded, but still didn't speak. Seeing her solemn expression, Zhang Lianzi thought for a moment and said, Don't worry, General Shen will be back in a moment. Yes, I'll be back in a moment. But when I get home, I have to rush to the border again non-stop. When I come back, it's already a corpse. Shen Yu seemed to have seen the past happening again. It was already late before going to court. Zhang Lianzi glanced at the palace gate, and then looked at her expression, feeling a little unbearable for a moment. Is there anything I can do for you? Shen Yu's eyes lit up for a moment. Now it seems that destiny cannot be violated and she can only be a dead horse. It's just that some words are inconvenient for outsiders to say, and they may be manipulated if they are spoken. Zhang Lianzi saw the doubts in his eyes clearly. Master Zhang, please tell me something, saying that this battle is dangerous. I just asked the girl to convey the words. I hope he will consider it carefully. Is this battle dangerous? Zhang Lianzi was suddenly shocked. How did you know? I had a dream. Shen Yu's breathing was stagnant, and just thinking about it made her eyes sore. Zhang Lianzi paid close attention to her expression and asked, What else did you dream about? Shen Yu shook her head, No more. Zhang Lianzi breathed a sigh of relief, and gradually loosened the clenched fists under his sleeves. He smiled slightly at her and said, Don't worry, I will tell you. The sky was completely bright, and the sun moved another inch higher into the sky. The heavy palace door gradually opened with a deep sound, and court officials walked out one after another. Shen's Hongan was in poor health and walked slowly behind. In addition to a few colleagues, Zhang Lianzi was also following him. Shen Yu looked over, and Zhang Lianzi happened to look towards her, shaking his head slightly at her. She had expected this outcome. On the way back to the general's mansion, the father and daughter took a car together. Shen Zhong'an didn't say a word from the beginning to the end. As soon as he entered the mansion, he took Shen Yu into the ancestral hall. The ancestral hall was filled with incense and dozens of tablets were placed. Shen Zhong'an's eyes glanced over one by one, and he asked in a deep voice, "Did you administer that medicine?" Originally, he thought this matter was strange. After hearing what Hong Qiao conveyed this morning, he was somewhat suspicious. Shen Yu's lips moved and she made a soft hum sound. "Why? I don't want you and your brother to go on an expedition." "Kneel down," Shen Zhong'an suddenly shouted sharply. When Shen Zhao came to the ancestral hall, what he saw was Shen Yu's face turned pale and she knelt down on the ground. Her knee hit the ground with a plop sound, which was painful to hear. "Father!" As soon as Shen Zhao opened his mouth, Shen Zhong'an raised his hand to stop him and said to Shen Yu, "Look at the tablets of your ancestors and say it again." Shen Yu gritted her teeth, raised her head and said seriously, "I didn't want you and your brother to go on an expedition, so I put medicine in your meals." "Auntie," Shen Zhao looked at her in shock, "No, Dad, there might be a misunderstanding here. The urgent report came in last night. It's impossible for Auntie to have given the medicine in advance." "Shen Zhong'an, let her speak for herself." "I had a dream. I dreamed that my father and brother couldn't come back from the battle, so I put medicine in the food in advance." Her face was pale, but her eyes were red, with bloodshot eyes around her pupils. Shen Zhong'an asked again, "Then why didn't you let yourself go?" Shen Yu said, "If only the two of you fall ill, I'm afraid someone will suspect you of claiming to be sick and avoiding fighting. It will be different if there are more than one person." Shen Zhong'an snorted coldly, "You have thought carefully, and you even invited several doctors from the Huishun Hall with great fanfare, just because of a dream of yours." "That's not just a dream." Shen Yu turned around on her knees and looked up at Shen Zhong'an, "Dad, can you please don't go? I never begged you. This time I beg you not to go and don't leave me." "One person." "Okay," Shen Zhong'an asked, "then tell me what the people at the border should do." Shen Yu said, "If Dad doesn't go, other generals will naturally take his place." Shen Zhong'an smiled and shook his head, looking at her with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "The Shen family has never produced anyone who is greedy for life and afraid of death. Don't other generals have wives and children? Besides, tell me who can take over?" He continued, "The Xiao family's army is guarding Chaihe. There are often disturbances from Mobei people on the Chongzhou border. The generals along the Yuanese prefecture have not been home for 3 years. Tell me who will come? Zhuexi outside Yanliang Pass, who will stop me? Do you really think that singing and dancing like Shengjing is the result of the soldiers' iron blood? It's not that you're not afraid of death, it's that you can't let go of the people. As a soldier, his bones and blood have long been integrated with the land of Great Zhou. So what if Dan Feng drinks blood? So what if it's a corpse wrapped in horse leather? Before every general goes out on an expedition, he is already prepared to never return." Shen Yu had tears in her eyes. It was precisely because she knew what her father was thinking that she couldn't say it out loud. Even if she did, he would rush to the front line without hesitation. Her father and brother died in the battle, but ended up with a ruined reputation. Just thinking about it made her heart hurt so much that she couldn't control herself. Shen Zhong'an looked down at her. This was the daughter he was proud of. She was born to practice martial arts. She was a bit stronger than Shen Zhao, but it was a pity that she was a girl. If it were a boy, the Shen family would definitely be able to produce another general, a general even better than him, but it was a pity that there was no precedent for a female general in the Great Zhou dynasty. He sighed and raised his hand to touch the top of her head. Ayu, even if what he said is true, Dad can't retreat. You have been on the battlefield with me. You are stronger than many men in Shengjing. You have seen war. Tragic, those words just now should not have come out of your mouth. Shen Yu burst into tears immediately. If she had been in her previous life, she would never have said that, but she had experienced the pain of losing her loved ones. She didn't ask for anything else. She just wanted them to live well, even if it cost her own life. Shen Zhong'an was still ill and felt a little strenuous after standing for a while, but he did not fall down and looked at the memorial tablets. Kneel down here and think carefully. Don't get up without my order. Shen Zhao stayed where he was, waiting for Shen Zhong'an's back to disappear from the door. Then he knelt down in front of Shen Yu, took out a handkerchief and wiped her tears. Are you still crying? Shen Yu lowered her head. Dad must be very disappointed in me. Girl, look at me. Shen Yu raised her head and listened to him solemnly say, he will never be disappointed in you. You are his pride and my pride. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince. Author, Gigi. Chapter 9. Shen Yu's eyes felt sore and she stared at Shen Zhao closely. Shen Zhao looked at her and saw the reluctance in her eyes. He comforted, it will be okay. Your brother and I are invincible. Come on, smile. Shen Yu pursed her lips and pulled the corners of her lips hard, but she could only squeeze out a smile that was uglier than crying. Forget it, stop laughing, it's so ugly. Shen Zhao reached out to pull her, kneel down for a while and get up. Dad doesn't know anyway. Shen Yu shook her head, broke away from his arm and continued to kneel. When will we set off? In 2 days, Shen Zhao said with a smile. Who told you to drug me? My legs are still weak now, how can I ride a horse? Shen Yu sniffed, you are so vain, no wonder you haven't found a wife yet. Tisk. Shen Zhao tried to hit her, but only pinched her face. Can't I find it? I was too busy to look for it. Nonsense. Shen Yu pulled away his hand. The third girl from Taifuyu's family likes you, I know it. Shen Zhao scolded, don't ruin this girl's reputation. Shen Yu moved her knees. The floor was hard and there was no futon, so it was really painful to kneel. It's true. Don't think I don't know. She asked someone to bring some snacks and you just returned them. Then you turned around and peeped at them. Don't you feel awkward? You do not understand. Shen Zhao said and simply sat down on the ground, and pulled her to sit on the ground. Look at daddy who can't come back even once a year. Do you think mother has no complaints? I don't want to delay other people's girls. Perhaps she is happy to be delayed by you. Shen Yu looked sideways at him. She couldn't tell what she was feeling at this moment. She just felt that her heart and mind were tightly blocked by something, and there was no place to breathe. She remembered that the third girl in Taifuyu's family was named Yuan Kaiu. When she got married, Yuan Kaiu came to add makeup to her and even shed tears at her wedding banquet. They understood each other tacitly, not saying a word to each other, but they both understood for whom the tears were shed. At least before her death, Yuan Kaiu was not married, so she was 1 year older than Shen Yu. Miss Yu is very kind. I want her to be my sister-in-law. I know, Shen Zhao said. Shen Yu grabbed Shen Zhao's hand and said, this time we go on an expedition together and come back together, and then you go find her. Shen Zhao's eyes moved slightly, and he turned to look at her, with a gentle smile on his lips. Okay. Shen Zhao stood up and left. Shen Yu, brother. Shen Zhao looked back. What's wrong? Shen Yu mustered up her courage. Do you believe that people can be reborn? Shen Zhao frowned. Rebirth. Well, Shen Yu nodded. I just feel like I've lived again, and all the regrets in my previous life have still been made up for. Shen Zhao came over, knelt down in front of her, and touched her forehead. Did you have a fever a few days ago? What nonsense are you talking about? Don't you believe it? Shen Yu was full of expectations. Believe it, Shen Zhao said with a smile. Why don't you believe it? Okay, don't think too much. Shen Yu's heart sank. Sure enough, no one would believe such an unbelievable thing. Shen Zhao said he believed it, but his eyes said everything. Shen Yu knelt until the sun set and the glow was gradually obscured. Then the maid came in to light the lamp. After lighting, she brought the food in and took a small table and placed it in front of her. The general said that the ancestors might not be able to see the Dark Lady kneeling at night, so she doesn't need to kneel, but she will still have to kneel during the day tomorrow. This is indeed what Shen Zhongan can say. He is obviously worried that something will happen to Liang kneeling at night, but he wants to find some unfair excuse. Shen Yu sat on the ground and slowly straightened her legs. An itching and tingling sensation spread from her knees, making her afraid to move for a long time. Are my dad and my brother feeling better? The maid responded, okay, I'm feeling better, but I still need to rest for 2 days. Shen Yu nodded, took the chopsticks and ate. She spent the night in the ancestral hall that night, and knelt down until dark the next day before letting her out. Lu Yao and Hong Qiao came to pick her up, but Shen Yu couldn't stand up at all, and her legs couldn't straighten. They held her back on the left and right, and made a medicinal soup for her to apply hot compresses on. When I opened my trouser legs, my knees were red and swollen, and there were some bruises in some places. Lu Yao felt distressed for a while, and couldn't help complaining with red eyes, the general is really cruel. He's already kneeling to such an extent that his legs will become useless if he kneels any more. Shen Yu grimaced in pain, can you please stop cursing me? It can't be broken. Hong Qiao scolded, who are you blaming? Miss, you drank 3 of them with 1 dose. Not only did you kill yourself, but you even got beaten and knelt down. You're so brave, ah. Hong Qiao pressed the hot handkerchief up, and Shen Yu didn't have time to say the next word except screaming. When a hot bandana soaked in liquid was applied to my legs, it felt terrible, numb, itchy, and stinging. Shen Yu clutched the quilt and endured it for a while, then she said, you should inform me in advance. It hurts as it should. She had chosen the 2 maids herself. She had been with them for many years, but she had never seen them in person, and she had developed a temperament. My dad and the others have decided to leave tomorrow morning, right? It's the day after tomorrow, Hong Qiao said. Shen Yu wondered, so late. Hong Qiao took the handkerchief from Lu Yao and said, the emperor has allocated another 20,000 elite cavalry. The general has asked the army to break camp and go ahead. They can catch up later. Shen Yu nodded, that's true. After applying the dressing on her legs, Shen Yu directed the 2 of them to collect her clothes, and then she sat on the couch and pointed out the world. There's no need to bring that one. It's almost snowing outside Yanliang Pass in October. I don't want this either. The material is expensive. Just bring a big cloak, the kind that is wear resistant and stain resistant. The 2 little girls arranged things for her, collected her things, and waited for her to go to bed before going out. After walking out of the room, Lu Yao said in a low voice, I didn't dare to say a word just now. I was afraid that I would spill the beans. If the lady knew about it, would she beat me to death? Lu Yao is straightforward and stutters when he lies. Hong Qiao said, hold on for now. If you dare to tell her, the general will beat you to death first when we come back. Lu Yao shrank his neck, then it's more important for me to save my life. Shen Yu lay in bed for a whole day and was barely able to get out of bed and walk around the next afternoon. They will leave Beijing tomorrow, and her current inconvenience in legs and feet cannot hold them back. She has to get up and resume her activities. While walking in the house, I suddenly heard a commotion outside the courtyard. Treating the concubine, eliminating the wife, reborn, I refuse to marry the scumbag and marry the prince. Author, Gigi. Chapter 10. Shen Yu supported the wall and opened the door, and saw Shen Yan standing at the courtyard door, with the maid next to her holding a food box in her hand. "Isn't it okay if I want to see my eldest sister?" Hong Chiao said. "Second miss, please forgive me, the general has ordered that no matter who comes to see him these days, he cannot be released." Shen Yan looked worried, and suddenly saw Shen Yu opening the door out of the corner of her eye. "Sister." Shen Yu waved to her, "Come in." Shen Yan's eyes swept across the faces of Hong Chiao and Lviao who were blocking people, and she was still a little wary when she thought about it. "Don't worry about them," Shen Yu said easily, "if they dare to stop you again, I will let them clean the stables later." Without any obstruction, Shen Yan walked over with a smile, held Shen Yu's arm and sat down, and asked, "Is eldest sister's leg feeling better? It can still be used." Shen Yan asked the maid to put down the food box and took out the contents one by one, which were all small and exquisite snacks. "Try it." Shen Yu picked one up and was about to bite it when she looked up and saw Lviao and Hong Chiao standing at the door with their eyes fixed on her. "You two want to eat?" Lu Yao and Hong Chiao shook their heads at the same time. Shen Yu said, "Then what kind of door god is still standing there? It's very cold with the door open. Go down." The two of them exited and closed the door. Only Shen Yu and Shen Yan were left in the room. Although the two are biological sisters, when it comes to their relationship, they are very different from Shen Zhao. After all, we didn't grow up together. One was proficient in chess, calligraphy, and painting, and the other was good at swords, guns, swords, and halberds. They had no common language at all. No matter in the past or now, Shen Yu and her half-sister could not talk to each other. A few words. "I can only find some boring topics. Your hair accessories look great today." Shen Yan stretched out her hand and pressed her temples. "You gave this to me?" "Ah. Really?" Shen Yu was a little dumbfounded. Shen Yan nodded and stretched out her hand. A green bracelet on her wrist looked valuable. "This is also a gift from my eldest sister. You gave me too many things, so I can't remember them all. And there are only a few things I use that are not gifts from you, so I remember them very clearly." Although the general's mansion is not like those aristocratic families that often have thousands of servants, they still have to maintain their reputation. Although there are few masters in the family, there are at least hundreds of servants. Every time Shenzhongan's military merit awards are given to MRS Shen for safekeeping, without knowing the price of oil and salt, he can only maintain the superficial prosperity, relying only on that few shops. Due to the rent from the land deed, Shen Yan privately could not buy a few decent pieces of jewelry in a year. But Shen Yu was different. Her mother died young, and old Mrs. Lu was the only granddaughter. She was so painful that it was like eyeballs. Gold, silver, jewelry, silk, and all good things were sent to her. But she doesn't like to dress up, and she always feels that those hair ornaments interfere with her martial arts practice, and her hair ornaments can fly out with just a few moves. The two chatted for a while, but Shen Yu didn't know how to answer the conversation. She kept stuffing snacks into her mouth. "This snack is good, where did you buy it?" Shen Yan's eyes moved and she said softly, "Master Zhang sent it to me and asked me to forward it to you." Shen Yu's mouthful of snacks got stuck in her throat. The memory of Zhang Lian drugging her food in her previous life was still fresh in her mind, and she immediately wanted to vomit out everything she had just eaten. Shen Yu lost her appetite, threw half of the snack in her hand on the table, twirled the fine crumbs on her fingers and said, "I told the concierge not to accept anything from him. You should not deliver it to him in the future." Shen Yan glanced at her out of the corner of her eye and considered, "Does the eldest sister have no intention of him?" Shen Yu said, I don't like him, so I don't need him to waste any more time. Shen Yan pursed her lips, I understand. The two of them were speechless for a moment. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, Shen Yan stood up and prepared to leave. When she reached the door, she stopped and hesitated for a moment before saying, Father and eldest brother have actually been away for 2 days. Shen Yu looked in shock. Shen Yan continued, Father told you not to tell you. They set off after you were punished to kneel for an hour that day. Why did you tell me? Because I know eldest sister wants to go. The border war was tense, and Shenzhongan and his son could not rest. Knowing a son is like a father, Shenzhongan knew that she would definitely follow him, so he, who always cared about his daughter, made people kneel for 2 days for the first time, just to trap Shen Yu at home. Once the war started, it would take anywhere from a few months to a year or two. When Shen Yu reached her age, she was a girl after all and could not waste her time on the border. After Shen Yan left, Shen Yu called the two girls in. Lu Yao pushed the door open and saw a bundle on the table, which she collected for Shen Yu yesterday. Hong Chiao saw that something was not right about this formation, and timidly called out, Miss. Shen Yu raised her eyes and asked, Father, did you say when we will set off? Hong Chiao, tomorrow. When? Mao Shi. Shen Yu slapped her hand on the table, should you set off at 9 o'clock tomorrow or me? My father has been gone for 3 days, and you have kept it secret from me until now. Lu Yao glanced at Hong Chiao, his legs went weak and he knelt down first. After kneeling down, he tugged on Hong Chiao's sleeves, and the two of them knelt at the door together. Shen Yu was upset and said, Go get my horse. Lu Yao stood up and wanted to go, but was pulled back by Hong Chiao. Hong Chiao raised her head and said, The general has something to say to the lady. Explain. I know, Lu Yao said ignorantly, the general said, that damn girl is going to follow me. If I can't stop her, tell her to stay in Shengjing. This is a military order, miss, this is the general's exact words. Even the words dead girl were used, how could Shen Yu know that they were the original words? Lu Yao imitated Shenzhongan's tone and made her laugh. Shen Yu said coldly, I have not signed up for the military, and military orders cannot control me. If my father is not here, I am the biggest one. I will take care of whoever leads the horse for me. Hong Chiao, little green medicine, it's great. Before Hong Chiao could finish her words, Lu Yao had already run away. The cold wind was blowing, and it was blowing brightly on the tower. The soldiers on guard at night yawned and paid careful attention to the surrounding disturbances. He rubbed his hands and said, It's so damn cold today. I think it's going to snow. It should be. Another soldier was extremely tired and squatted half of his body to hide from the wind. You watch alone for a while, be careful, and we will change shifts. The soldier was lying on the fence of the watchtower, staring intently outside the camp. Okay, 1 hour, 1 moment wait, that's. The crouching soldier heard that the tone was wrong and quickly stood up, where is it? The soldier from before rubbed his eyes and looked again, but didn't see anything. Maybe I saw it wrong. There was a black shadow. I thought it was a person. It flashed and disappeared. People are definitely not that fast. It's dark at night, and the soldiers who can pick out the soldiers who go up to the watchtower have excellent eyesight and ears. The soldier was so surprised that he became energetic and lay on the watchtower to watch carefully. Shen Yu lay down behind the wall and waited quietly for a stick of incense before sneaking into the camp under the cover of night. There were soldiers patrolling the camp at night, so she rested next to the tent in a leeward place for the night, and in the morning she sneaked in while the soldiers were doing their morning exercises.